Welcome to Forgotten Myths. Get comfortable, adjust your pillow, let the darkness settle around you. Tonight, we're talking about love. But not the love you see in movies, not the sanitized Disney version of romance where obstacles are overcome and everyone lives happily ever after. No. Tonight, we're talking about love the way the ancient Greeks understood it. Dangerous, destructive, fatal. The Greeks had a word, Eros. We translate it as love or desire or passion, but that translation misses something crucial. Eros wasn't just a feeling, it was a force, a power that seized you, possessed you, drove you to do things you would never otherwise do. The Greeks didn't see falling in love as a choice. They saw it as an affliction, a kind of madness that the gods inflicted on mortals for their own amusement. And when the gods decided to play with human hearts, people died. Tonight, we're telling 4 stories, Orpheus and Eurydice, the musician who loved so deeply that he walked into the underworld itself to retrieve his dead wife, who was given one impossible condition, who failed at the very last moment, Echo and Narcissus, the nymph who could only repeat what others said, the beautiful boy who could love no one but himself, 2 people destroyed by the same curse, Pyramus and Thisbe, the original Romeo and Juliet, 2 lovers separated by a wall, united only in death, the story Shakespeare borrowed and softened, and Eros and Psyche, the god of love himself, falling for a mortal woman, the cruel trials imposed by a jealous goddess, a love story that's also a horror story. These are the cursed lovers of Greek mythology. Their stories don't end well. But then, the Greeks never promised us happy endings. Let's begin. There was a man named Orpheus. His father, depending on which version you believe, was either Apollo, the god of music himself, or a Thracian king named Oeagrus. His mother was Calliope, the muse of epic poetry, the muse who inspired Homer, the muse who gave humanity the Iliad and the Odyssey. With parents like these, Orpheus was destined for greatness, and he achieved it. He became the greatest musician who ever lived. Not the greatest mortal musician, the greatest musician, period. His skill surpassed that of the gods themselves. When Orpheus played his lyre, the world stopped to listen. Rivers paused in their courses. The water hung suspended, forgetting to flow, enchanted by the music. Trees uprooted themselves and walked closer, clustering around him like an audience, their branches swaying in time with his melodies. Rocks rolled down from mountains to hear him better. Stones that had sat unmoved for millennia suddenly found reasons to travel. Wild animals forgot their nature. Lions lay down beside deer. Wolves sat peacefully with lambs, predator and prey alike, hypnotized by the sound. Even the gods fell silent when Orpheus played. Even they, who had heard all the music of heaven, found something new in his songs, something that moved them in ways they couldn't explain. This was the power of Orpheus, music that could bend reality itself. And then he met her, Eurydice, a wood nymph, an Oread, a spirit of the mountains, beautiful as all nymphs were beautiful. But there was something more about her, something that caught Orpheus's attention in a way no one else ever had. Maybe it was the way she moved through the forest. Maybe it was the sound of her laughter. Maybe it was the way she looked at him when he played, not with the glazed enchantment that affected everyone else, but with genuine appreciation, with understanding. Eurydice heard his music the way he meant it to be heard. She understood what he was trying to say. For Musician, there is no greater intimacy than that. Orpheus fell in love. And miracle of miracles, Eurydice loved him back. They were married. The ceremony was beautiful, attended by nymphs and mortals alike. Hymenaeus himself, the god of marriage, came to bless their union, but the omens were bad. Hymenaeus's torch, which should have burned bright and clear, sputtered and smoked. The flame kept dying. He had to relight it again and again. The Greeks paid attention to omens. They believed the gods communicated through signs. A smoking torch at a wedding was not a good sign, but Orpheus and Eurydice were too happy to notice, too in love to pay attention to warnings. They should have paid attention. Shortly after the wedding, some say days, some say hours, Eurydice was walking through a meadow. She was happy. She was loved. She was married to the greatest musician in the world. Life was perfect. She didn't see the snake. It was hidden in the grass. A viper, coiled and waiting. When Eurydice's foot came down near it, the snake struck. Fangs pierced her ankle. Venom flooded her bloodstream. Eurydice screamed. She tried to run, but the poison was already working. Her legs gave out beneath her. She fell. By the time anyone found her, she was dead. Orpheus's grief was beyond description. He had written songs about sorrow before, abstract exercises, artistic explorations of an emotion he had never truly felt. Now he understood. Grief wasn't poetic, it was physical. It was a weight on his chest that made breathing difficult. It was a hollowness in his stomach that no food could fill. It was waking up in the morning and forgetting, for one blessed moment, that she was gone, and then remembering. He couldn't eat, he couldn't sleep, he couldn't function. All he could do was play. He took his lyre to the spot where Eurydice had died. He sat among the wildflowers that had witnessed her last moments. And he played his grief. The music that emerged was unlike anything he had ever created. It was raw. It was broken. It was the sound of a heart being torn apart. The rivers didn't just pause, they wept. The water itself seemed to cry. The trees that gathered around him shed their leaves in mourning, even though it wasn't autumn. The animals that came to listen lay down and refused to move. Some of them, the stories say, died of sorrow right there. The music was that powerful. The grief was that contagious. Even the gods, hearing Orpheus's lament from their seats on Olympus, felt uncomfortable. They shifted in their thrones. They looked away from each other. This was not entertainment. This was not art. This was pain made audible. Days passed. Weeks. Orpheus's grief did not diminish. If anything, it grew stronger. The absence of Eurydice became more real with each passing moment. Every memory he had of her became sharper, more painful. He couldn't accept it. He wouldn't accept it. Other mortals, when they lost loved ones, mourned, and eventually moved on. They had no choice. Death was final. The underworld didn't give back what it took. But Orpheus was not other mortals. He had a gift, a power, music that could move rivers and trees and stones. Could it move the gods of death themselves? Could it open the gates of the underworld? There was only one way to find out. Orpheus made a decision that no mortal had ever made before. He would go to the underworld. He would find Eurydice. He would bring her back. The entrance to the underworld was at Tenerus, in the southern Peloponnese, a cave that led down, down, down into darkness. Mortals didn't go there. Mortals weren't supposed to go there. The underworld was for the dead, and only the dead. But Orpheus went. He walked into the cave. He descended the winding passages. He left the world of light behind. The darkness was absolute. No torch could illuminate it properly. This was the darkness of death itself, and it swallowed. Light, like it swallowed everything else. Orpheus kept walking. He came to the river Styx, the boundary between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. Charon was there, the ferryman, an ancient figure, gray and grim, who had been carrying souls across this river since the beginning of time. "You don't belong here," Charon said. "You're not dead." Orpheus didn't argue. He didn't plead. He didn't try to bribe the ferryman with gold. He played. He lifted his lyre and he played. The music echoed across the dark water. It filled the cavern. It reached into every shadow, every corner of that lightless place. Charon's oar stopped moving. The ferryman stood frozen, listening. His ancient face, which had seen millions of souls pass into death, showed something it hadn't shown in millennia: emotion. When the song ended, Charon said nothing. He simply gestured for Orpheus to board the boat. They crossed the Styx in silence. On the other side, Cerberus waited. Three-headed dog, the guardian of the underworld, a monster that had never let a living soul pass and had never let a dead soul escape. Each of its 3 heads was the size of a lion. Its teeth were like swords. Its eyes burned with infernal light. It saw Orpheus step off Charon's boat. It growled, a sound like thunder underground, a sound that had made heroes tremble, that had turned brave men back at the threshold of death. Orpheus played, a different song this time, softer, gentler, a lullaby. The growling stopped. One head lowered, then another, then the third. Cerberus, the invincible guardian of hell, lay down at Orpheus's feet and closed all 6 of its eyes. It slept, and Orpheus walked past. The underworld was vast, a kingdom of shadows, stretching endlessly in all directions. Rivers of fire, fields of gray grass, the wailing of the damned in the distance. Orpheus walked through all of it, playing as he went. His music cleared a path. Obstacles moved aside. Dangers receded. Finally, he reached the palace, the throne room of Hades and Persephone, the king and queen of the dead. Hades sat on a throne of black stone, his face stern and unyielding. He had ruled this realm for eons. He had heard every plea, every argument, every desperate bargain that mortals could offer. None of them had moved him. Persephone sat beside him, the queen of the dead, who was also the goddess of spring. She spent half the year in this darkness and half in the world above. She knew both life and death. Orpheus approached the throne. Around them, the court of the dead watched, the shades of every human who had ever died. An audience of billions, all silent, all waiting to see what would happen. Orpheus didn't speak. He played. This was not the grief song he had played in the meadow. This was something else. This was a story told in music. He played the moment he first saw Eurydice, the way the light had caught her hair, the way she had smiled. So played their courtship, the nervous conversations, the growing realization that this was something real, something important. He played their wedding day, the joy, the hope, the promise of a lifetime together. And then he played her death, the snake in the grass, the sudden pain, the light leaving her eyes. He played his grief, the emptiness, the desperate wish to follow her into death. And then, and this was the part that mattered, he played his love. Not past tense, present tense, ongoing. He loved her. He still loved her. He would always love her. Death couldn't change that. Nothing could change that. The music said what words couldn't say. It made the audience feel what he felt. It transmitted his love directly into their hearts. And the underworld changed. For the first time in history, the damned stopped their labors. Tantalus, who was condemned to eternal hunger and thirst, forgot about the fruit he couldn't reach and the water he couldn't drink. He listened. Sisyphus, who was condemned to roll a boulder up a hill forever, let the boulder fall. He sat on the ground and he listened. Ixion, who was bound to a spinning wheel of fire, felt the wheel slow and stop. He listened. The Furies, the goddesses of vengeance, whose faces were so terrible that mortals died from looking at them, wept. The Furies had never wept before. They were beings of pure punishment, pure retribution. Compassion was foreign to their nature. But they heard Orpheus's song, and tears streamed down their terrible faces. Even Hades was moved. The Lord of the Dead, who had ruled this realm with iron resolve for millennia, felt something stir in his chest, something he barely recognized. He looked at Persephone. She was crying too. "Enough," Hades said. His voice was hoarse. "Stop playing. Ask what you came to ask." Orpheus lowered his lyre. "I've come for Eurydice," he said. "My wife, she died before her time. I want to take her back." Hades's face hardened. The dead don't return. That is the law. Laws can be changed. You're the king here. You make the laws. I don't make them. I enforce them. The natural order requires that death be permanent. If I make exceptions, the whole system collapses. Then make one exception, just one, for her, for me. Hades shook his head. Everyone who comes here says the same thing. Make an exception for me. My case is special. Your case is not special. Death took your wife. Death takes everyone eventually. Orpheus felt despair rising in his chest. He had come so far. He had done the impossible. And now, at the final moment, he was going to fail? "Please," he said, and his voice cracked. Persephone leaned over and whispered something in Hades' ear. The Lord of the Dead listened. His expression shifted, slightly, almost imperceptibly. He whispered back. They argued quietly while Orpheus waited. Finally, Hades turned back to him. "My wife has convinced me to offer you a chance," he said. "Against my better judgment. You may take Eurydice back to the world of the living." Orpheus's heart soared. "But there is a condition." His heart stopped. "She will walk behind you. You will walk ahead. You must not look back at her until you have both fully left the underworld. Until you are both standing in the sunlight of the upper world. If you look back before then, even once, even for a moment, she returns to the dead forever, and you will never see her again." Orpheus nodded. "I understand." "Do you?" Hades' eyes were cold. "Do you understand what I'm asking? You will hear her footsteps behind you. You will want to look. You will want to make sure she's there. You will doubt. You will fear. And if you give in to that doubt, even for an instant—" "I understand," Orpheus said again. "I won't look back." Hades studied him for a long moment. "We'll see," he said. Eurydice appeared beside Orpheus. She was pale, translucent almost. A shade among shades, but she was there. She was real. Orpheus wanted to embrace her. He wanted to hold her, to feel her in his arms, to confirm that this was actually happening. But he couldn't. He wasn't allowed to turn around. "Walk," Hades commanded. Orpheus walked. He didn't look back. He heard footsteps behind him. Eurydice's footsteps. Soft and uncertain, the steps of someone who had been dead and was now returning to life. Relief flooded through him. She was following. She was there. He kept walking. The path out of the underworld was long, longer than the path in, it seemed. The darkness pressed against him. The silence was oppressive. All he could hear was his own breathing and the footsteps behind him. The footsteps that were definitely there, that he was sure were there. Weren't they? The path wound through the geography of death. They passed the fields of asphodel, where ordinary souls wandered for eternity. Gray figures in a gray landscape, doing nothing, feeling nothing, simply existing. Orpheus could see them from the corner of his eye, millions of shades stretching to the horizon. This was what awaited most mortals after death. Not punishment, not reward, just this. He kept walking. They passed the rivers of the underworld, the Styx which they had already crossed, the Acheron, the river of pain, the Lethe, the river of forgetfulness, where souls drank to erase their memories of life. Orpheus made sure not to touch the water. He made sure Eurydice didn't either. Could she? Could she interact with the physical world in her current state? He didn't know. He couldn't ask. He couldn't turn around to check. He kept walking. They passed Tartarus in the distance, the pit of the damned, the place where the truly wicked suffered eternal punishment. Orpheus could hear screaming from that direction, the cries of those who had offended the gods. Sisyphus pushing his boulder, Tantalus reaching for fruit that always pulled away, Ixion spinning on his wheel of fire, the Danaids trying to fill a bathtub with holes. Endless punishment, endless suffering, the price of hubris. Orpheus walked faster. He didn't want to think about what would happen to him if he failed, if he looked back, if he broke his word to the Lord of the dead. Would Hades punish him? Would he end up in Tartarus beside the other oathbreakers? He didn't know. He kept walking. Time had no meaning in the underworld. Orpheus couldn't tell if he had been walking for hours or days. The darkness never changed. There was no sun to mark the passage of time, no stars to navigate by. Just the path, just the darkness, just the footsteps behind him, the footsteps that were getting quieter. Or were they? Orpheus strained to hear. Yes, they were there, the soft pad of feet on stone, the whisper of fabric moving. She was behind him, but how far behind? A step? 10 steps? 100? What if she was falling behind? What if the journey was too much? For her? The dead weren't meant to return to life. It went against the natural order. Maybe the natural order was fighting back. Maybe the underworld was trying to keep her. He couldn't turn around to check. He could only walk and trust and doubt. The doubt came slowly at first. A whisper in the back of his mind, a nagging question that wouldn't go away. What if she's not there? He pushed the thought away. Of course she was there. He could hear her footsteps. Hades had promised. But gods lie. Gods break promises. Gods play games with mortal hearts. No, not this time. Hades had been moved by his music. Persephone had wept. This was real? Was it? Or was it a cruel joke? Let the mortal think he's won, then snatch it away at the last moment? Orpheus clenched his fists. He kept walking, but the doubt grew stronger. It had been hours, days maybe. The path seemed endless. The darkness seemed to press closer. And the footsteps? Were they real? Or was his mind inventing them? When you listen hard enough for a sound, sometimes you hear it even when it's not there. She's not behind you. You're alone. You've been alone this whole time. Hades is laughing at you right now. Orpheus's pace faltered. He wanted to turn around. Just a quick glance. Just to confirm. But he couldn't. The rules were clear. The rules. Hades' rules. A god who rules over death, who has never shown mercy to anyone, suddenly makes an exception for you? And you believed him? One glance. That's all it would take. One glance to know for certain. But if he glanced, and she was there, he would lose her. And if he glanced, and she wasn't there, at least he would know. He kept walking. The doubt kept growing. Light. Ahead of him, impossibly distant, a pinpoint of light. The exit, the end of the underworld, the beginning of the world above. Orpheus's heart leaped. They were almost there. They had almost made it. He walked faster. The light grew larger, brighter. He could see the opening now, the mouth of the cave, the world outside, green and alive and bathed in sunlight. 10 more steps. The footsteps behind him were still there. He could hear them, or could he? 5 more steps. He was at the threshold. Sunlight touched his face. He stepped out of the darkness and into the light. He had made it. He was in the upper world. And Eurydice, was she out yet? He couldn't tell. He couldn't hear her footsteps anymore. The sounds of the living world, birds, wind, leaves, drowned everything out. Was she standing behind him in the sunlight, free? Or was she still in the cave, still in the darkness, still one step away from freedom? He didn't know. He had to know. He turned around. Eurydice was there. She was right there, one step behind him. Her foot was raised, about to cross the threshold into the light. One more step, and she would have been free. Their eyes met. Hers went wide with horror. "No," she whispered. And then she was gone. Not slowly, not gradually, instantly. One moment she was there, solid and real, her hand reaching toward him. The next moment she was smoke, shadow, nothing. Pulled back into the darkness, dragged down into the underworld. Orpheus lunged for her. His hands passed through empty air. "Eurydice," his voice echoed in the cave. No one answered. She was gone. He had lost her. He had lost her because he couldn't trust, because he couldn't wait, because at the very last moment, with freedom one step away, his doubt had been stronger than his faith. He fell to his knees at the mouth of the cave, and he screamed. For 7 days, Orpheus sat at the entrance to the underworld. He didn't eat. He didn't sleep. He didn't move. He just sat there, staring into the darkness, hoping that somehow the gods would change their minds, that they would give him another chance. On the 7th day, he stood up. He walked back into the cave. He descended into the darkness. He returned to the sticks. Charon was there, waiting. "Take me across," Orpheus said. Charon shook his head. "No." "I'll play for you again. No." Orpheus played anyway. He played the most beautiful music he had ever created. He played until his fingers bled, until his voice gave out, until he collapsed from exhaustion. Charon didn't move. "The Lord of the Dead has spoken," the ferryman said. "You will not cross this river again while you live. You had your chance. You failed. That is the end." Orpheus begged. He pleaded. He offered anything, his music, his life, his soul. Charon was unmoved. The underworld was closed to him. Eurydice was gone forever. Orpheus wandered the world. He played his lyre. But the music was different now. Darker, more painful. His songs were no longer about love or joy or beauty. They were about loss, about the cruelty of hope, about getting so close to salvation and having it torn away at the last moment. People still gathered to hear him. His music was still the most beautiful in the world, but now it made them cry. He never married again. He never even looked at another woman. Some say he rejected all female companionship entirely. Others say he simply couldn't bear the idea of replacing Eurydice with anyone else. He loved her still. He loved her always. And he waited for death. Not actively. He didn't kill himself. But he didn't avoid danger either. He wandered into wild places among savage people, almost hoping that something would end his suffering. Eventually, something did. The Maenads found him, the female followers of Dionysus. Wild women who worshipped the god of wine through ecstatic rituals, through dancing and drinking and frenzy. They had heard of Orpheus. They had heard that he rejected female companionship. They took it as an insult. Or maybe they were just drunk and looking for violence. The myths aren't clear on their motivations. What they're clear on is what happened next. They attacked him. Orpheus didn't fight back. He barely even reacted. He just sat there with his lyre as they descended on him. They tore him apart, literally. They ripped his body limb from limb. They scattered his pieces across the landscape. His head ended up in the river Hebrus. It floated downstream, still singing. Even in death, even separated from his body, Orpheus kept singing Eurydice's name. The head eventually washed ashore on the island of Lesbos. The people there built a shrine to it. They say that even after death, Orpheus's head continued to give prophecies. His lyre floated up to the sky and became a constellation. The lyra. You can still see it on clear nights, a reminder of the greatest musician who ever lived. And his soul descended to the underworld, where Eurydice was waiting. Some versions of the myth end there, with Orpheus's death. They let you imagine what happened next. Other versions are explicit. Orpheus died and went to the underworld. The same underworld he had infiltrated while alive. The same kingdom he had moved with his music. This time, he wasn't a visitor. He was a resident. He walked through the fields of the dead. He searched among the countless shades, and he found her, Eurydice. She had been waiting for him all this time, all these years. She had known he would come eventually. She had known that death would reunite them. They embraced. They walked together through the underworld, hand in hand. And this time, Orpheus could look at her whenever he wanted. This time, there were no conditions, no restrictions, no cruel tests. They were together, forever. The curse was broken. The tragedy was over. Or was it? Because here's the thing about the underworld. It's not a nice place. It's gray and cold and joyless. The dead don't feel things the way the living do. They exist, but they don't truly live. Was this reunion a happy ending? Or was it just two shades, embracing in the darkness, going through the motions of love without being able to actually feel it? The myths don't say. The Greeks weren't interested in happy endings. They were interested in truth. And the truth is, Orpheus looked back. He failed. And nothing, not even death, could undo that moment of weakness. In the mountains of Greece, there lived a nymph named Echo. She was an Oread, a spirit of the mountains. She lived in caves and forests, among the rocks and streams of the high places. Echo was known for one thing, her voice. She loved to talk. She could talk for hours. about anything, to anyone. She was witty and clever, quick with a response, always ready with a story or a joke. This would be her downfall. Zeus, as you might know, was not faithful to his wife, Hera. He had affairs constantly. With goddesses, with nymphs, with mortal women, he couldn't help himself. Or rather, he didn't want to help himself. Hera knew about the affairs. She always found out eventually. And she always punished someone, usually not Zeus himself, but the women he seduced. One day, Hera came to the mountains looking for her husband. She had heard rumors that he was there, meeting with nymphs, doing what he always did. Echo saw her coming. Now Echo knew that Zeus was indeed in those mountains. She knew which cave he was hiding in and which nymphs he was with. She also knew what would happen if Hera found him. There would be rage, there would be punishment. The nymphs Zeus had seduced would suffer horribly. So Echo did something brave, or foolish, or both. She intercepted Hera. She started talking. "Great Queen, what an honor. What brings you to these mountains? Are you looking for something? Someone? Let me help you. I know these paths so well. I've lived here for centuries. Let me tell you about this region, the caves, the springs, the beautiful views." And she kept talking. Every time Hera tried to move on, Echo had another story, another observation, another question that demanded attention. She talked and talked and talked, and while she talked, Zeus escaped with the nymphs. They slipped out the back of the cave, down the mountain, away to safety. By the time Hera realized what was happening, it was too late. Zeus was gone. She turned on Echo, with fury in her eyes. "You," Hera said, "you distracted me deliberately. You let him escape." Echo tried to deny it. She started to explain, to make excuses, to talk her way out of trouble the way she always did. But Hera was done listening. "You love your voice so much," the goddess said. "You love to talk. Very well. From now on, you will never speak first. You will only be able to repeat what others say to you. The last words they speak, those will be the only words you can say." And the curse took hold. Echo opened her mouth to protest, to plead, to explain. Nothing came out. She was silent. Forever. Time passed. Echo wandered the mountains, alone and voiceless. She could hear others speak, but she could never initiate conversation. She could only repeat the last thing she heard, like a reflection of sound. It was a cruel curse. For someone who had loved conversation more than anything, being reduced to mere repetition was torture. And then she saw him, Narcissus. He was the most beautiful boy who had ever lived, the son of the river god Cephisus and the nymph Liriope. He was 16 years old, and his beauty was already legendary. His face was perfect. Sculptors would later try to capture it in marble, and all of them would fail. His eyes were deep pools that seemed to hold secrets. His hair fell in perfect curls. His body was lithe and graceful, the body of a young god rather than a mortal. Everyone who saw Narcissus fell in love with him, men, women, nymphs, mortals. It didn't matter. One look at his face and they were lost. Echo saw him walking through the forest, hunting deer, and she was struck by the same affliction that had struck everyone else. She loved him instantly, completely, hopelessly. She followed him through the trees. She watched him from behind rocks and bushes. She wanted desperately to speak to him, to tell him how she felt, to make him notice her. But she couldn't speak first. Hera's curse held, firm. All she could do was wait for him to say something and then repeat it. Narcissus had wandered away from his hunting companions. He was lost in the forest. "Is anyone there?" he called out. Echo's heart leaped. Finally, a chance. "Anyone there?" she called back. Narcissus looked around, confused. "Come to me. Come to me," Echo repeated, her voice full of longing. "Why do you run from me? Why do you run from me?" Narcissus was intrigued. This was a strange conversation. The voice seemed to be agreeing with everything he said. "Let us meet," he called. "Let us meet," Echo responded. And she stepped out from behind the trees. She ran toward him, arms outstretched, ready to embrace him, ready to finally touch the boy she loved. Narcissus recoiled. He stepped back, disgust on his perfect face. "Get away from me," he said. "Don't touch me. I would die before I would let you have me." Echo stopped. Her arms fell to her sides. She wanted to explain. She wanted to tell him she wasn't trying to attack him, that she loved him, that she just wanted to be near him. But she couldn't say any of that. All she could say was, "I would let you have me." Narcissus laughed, a cruel sound. "Pathetic," he said, and he walked away. Echo was destroyed. She had felt rejection before. Everyone had. But this was different. This was the love of her life, the only person she would ever feel this way about, dismissing her like garbage. She couldn't eat. She couldn't sleep. She could barely move. She retreated to a cave in the mountains, the deepest, darkest cave she could find, and she stayed there. Days passed, weeks, months. Echo didn't come out. Her body, already insubstantial as a nymph's body, began to fade. Her flesh withered. Her bones dried and crumbled. Eventually, there was nothing left of her but her voice. Just the voice, bouncing off the cave walls, repeating whatever it heard. "That's why we have echoes today," the Greeks said. "That's why sounds bounce back from mountains and caves and empty halls. It's echo, still there, still repeating, still waiting for Narcissus to say something kind." But Narcissus's story wasn't over. When he was born, his mother Liriope had consulted a seer, the famous prophet Tiresias, who had been both man and woman, who had been blinded by Hera and given second sight by Zeus. "Will my son live a long life?" Liriope asked. Tiresias considered the question. "He will live long," the prophet said, "if he never knows himself." It was a strange prophecy, cryptic, like all prophecies. Liriope didn't understand what it meant. She would find out. Years passed. Narcissus grew more beautiful, more desired, more dismissive. He rejected everyone. Male, female, nymph, mortal. It didn't matter. He looked at them with those perfect eyes, and he found them all wanting. He had never met anyone worthy of his love. He was beginning to think he never would. One day, exhausted from hunting, Narcissus came to a pool in the forest. It was a perfect pool, clear and still, like a mirror. No shepherd had ever brought their flocks here. No animals came to drink. Even leaves didn't fall into it. The water was undisturbed, pristine. Narcissus knelt at the edge to drink, and he saw his reflection. He had never seen his own face before. Think about that. In the ancient world, there were no photographs, no glass mirrors as we know them. There were polished metal surfaces, but they gave imperfect reflections, blurry, distorted, like looking at yourself through rippling water. Most people went their whole lives with only a vague sense of what they looked like. Narcissus had been told he was beautiful. Everyone said so. Strangers stopped in the street to stare. Suitors threw themselves at his feet. Poets composed verses about his face, but he had never actually seen what they saw, until now. He looked into the pool, and he saw the most beautiful face he had ever encountered. Perfect features, eyes that seemed to hold the secrets of the universe, hair that fell in perfect curls around a face that was itself perfection incarnate. A mouth that was curved just so, as if perpetually on the verge of a smile. For the first time in his life, Narcissus understood what everyone else saw when they looked at him, and he fell in love, instantly, completely, hopelessly, just as Echo had fallen for him, just as everyone fell for him. But this time, the object of his love was himself. He didn't realize it at first. He thought he was looking at someone else, a water spirit perhaps, a nymph who lived in this pool. "Who are you?" he asked. The face mouthed the words back at him, but made no sound. "Why won't you speak to me? Are you shy?" The face mimicked his movements, his expressions, his lips forming words. "Please," Narcissus said, "tell me your name." The face pleaded back at him, wordless, desperate. Narcissus felt his heart ache. This beautiful creature, trapped in the water, unable to speak. How lonely they must be. How sad. He reached out to touch the face. His fingers broke the surface of the water. The face shattered into 1,000 ripples. Fragmented, destroyed. Narcissus yanked his hand back in horror. "No, come back, I'm sorry." Slowly, the water stilled. The ripples faded. The face returned, as beautiful as before, as unreachable as before. Narcissus couldn't look away. He lay at the edge of the pool, staring at the face in the water. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky. Shadows lengthened. Still he stared. He tried to kiss the reflection. He leaned down, closer and closer, until his lips almost touched the water. The face leaned toward him too, coming closer, their lips almost meeting. Then contact. His lips touched water, and the face shattered again. He pulled back. He waited. The water stilled. The face came back as beautiful as before, as close as before, as impossible to touch as before. "Why do you torment me?" Narcissus whispered. "Why do you come so close and then flee? Don't you want me the way I want you?" The face looked back at him with the same longing, the same frustration, the same helpless desire. Night fell. Narcissus didn't move. The pool reflected the stars now, but he could still see the face in the darkness. Still beautiful, still watching. "I'll stay here," he promised the reflection. "I'll stay until you speak to me, until you come out of the water, until I can touch you." The face said nothing. It just watched. Narcissus closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the sun was rising. He was still by the pool. He had been there all night. "Who are you?" Narcissus asked. The face mouthed the words back at him, but made no sound. "Why won't you speak to me?" Silence. "Why do you run from me every time I reach for you?" Silence. "I love you," Narcissus said. "Don't you understand? I love you more than I've ever loved anything, more than I've ever loved anyone. Please, come to me. Let me hold you. Let me be with you." The face looked back at him with longing, with desperation, with love. But it couldn't come to him. It could never come to him, because it was him. Eventually, Narcissus understood. He had been staring at the water for hours, days maybe. He had lost track of time. And finally, through the fog of obsession, clarity broke through. "It's me," he said. "The face in the water. It's my own face." The reflection nodded. "I've fallen in love with myself. The reflection's eyes filled with tears. I can never have what I love. I can never touch him. I can never hold him. The moment I reach for him, he disappears. The tears began to fall into the water, disturbing the surface. The reflection shattered, reformed, shattered again. Narcissus laughed, a broken, terrible sound. "This is my punishment," he said, "for all the hearts I broke, for Echo, for everyone who loved me and got nothing in return. Now I know what they felt. Now I feel what they felt." He lay down at the edge of the pool. He didn't move. Narcissus stayed by the pool. He didn't eat. He didn't drink. He couldn't tear himself away from the reflection that he loved and hated in equal measure. His body weakened. His perfect features grew gaunt. But even in death, he was beautiful. The nymphs found him there by the pool. He was gone. His spirit had descended to the underworld. But where his body had lain, something was growing. A flower, white petals around a yellow center, nodding over the water as if still trying to see its own reflection. The Narcissus flower. That's where the name comes from. That's why we call it narcissism when someone loves themselves too much. Because of a beautiful boy who looked into a pool and never looked away. In the underworld, Narcissus's spirit sought out the pool of the river Styx. He knelt at its edge. He stared at his own reflection. Even in death, he couldn't stop. And somewhere nearby, in the gray halls of Hades, a voice repeated his sighs. Echo, still repeating, still waiting, still in love with someone who would never love her back. This story doesn't take place in Greece. It takes place in Babylon, the great city of Mesopotamia, the city of the Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The Greeks adopted this story. They made it their own. But the setting remained Babylon, with its towering walls and its wealthy merchants and its strict social codes. In that city, in neighboring houses, 2 children were born. A boy named Pyramus, a girl named Thisbe. They were the most beautiful young people in all the East. Pyramus was handsome beyond measure. Thisbe was lovelier than any woman in the city, and their houses shared a wall. They grew up together. As children, they played in the spaces between their houses. They talked through windows. They developed the easy friendship of neighbors who see each other every day. But somewhere along the way, friendship became something more. Pyramus noticed the way Thisbe laughed, the way she tilted her head when she was thinking, the way she looked at him with those dark eyes. Thisbe noticed the way Pyramus moved, the confidence in his walk, the kindness in his smile, the way he always seemed to know exactly what to say. They fell in love, slowly at first, then all at once. By the time they were old enough to marry, they were completely, hopelessly devoted to each other. There was just one problem. Their fathers hated each other. No one remembered how the feud started. Some said it was a business deal gone wrong. Some said it was an insult at a party. Some said it went back generations to an argument between their grandfathers or their great-grandfathers. The cause didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that the 2 families despised each other. They didn't speak. They didn't acknowledge each other's existence. If one family was hosting a celebration, the other family made sure to be loudly celebrating something else. And under no circumstances would they ever allow their children to marry. When Pyramus and Thisbe asked, begged, Their fathers, for permission, they were refused. "You will never see that boy again," Thisbe's father said. "That girl is forbidden to you," Pyramus's father said. They were locked in their houses, guards were posted, the windows that faced each other were sealed, the lovers were separated. But they found a way. The wall between their houses was old. It had been built hastily, generations ago, when the city was expanding quickly. Babylon was growing so fast that builders couldn't keep up with demand. Corners were cut. Materials were stretched thin. Quality was sacrificed for speed. The mortar wasn't perfect. The stones weren't perfectly fitted. Over the years, the house settled. The foundations shifted slightly. Tiny imperfections became larger imperfections. There was a crack, a thin crack, barely visible, running from floor to ceiling in a hidden corner. Too small to fit a hand through. Too narrow to even see through properly. So insignificant that the servants had never bothered to repair it, but wide enough to whisper through. Pyramus found it first. He had been searching the wall in desperation every day for weeks, looking for any way to reach Thisbe. He ran his fingers over every stone, every gap, every imperfection. He pressed his ear to the wall, hoping to hear her voice. And then, in a corner of his room that was hidden by a chest, he found it. The crack. He could feel air moving through it. Air from the other side. Air from Thisbe's room. His heart pounded. He whispered into it. "Thisbe?" Silence. Then, barely audible. "Pyramus, is that you?" She had been searching too. She had been looking for the same crack from the other side. They had both been drawn to the same spot, as if the wall itself wanted them to find each other. The crack became their secret, their connection, their lifeline. Every night, when their households were asleep, they crept to the wall. They pressed their lips to the cold stone. They whispered their love through that narrow opening. "I miss you," Thisbe would say. "I love you," Pyramus would respond. "I dream about you. I can't live without you." They talked for hours, about their days which were empty without each other, about their futures which seemed impossible, about their love which only grew stronger with each whispered conversation. They pressed their palms against the wall, imagining they could feel each other's warmth through the stone. They kissed the crack, imagining they were kissing each other. Sometimes they just breathed together. In the silence of the night, they could hear each other's breath through the wall. It was almost like lying beside each other. Almost, but not quite. They couldn't see each other. They couldn't touch. They were separated by mere inches of stone, but those inches might as well have been miles. The wall had become both their connection and their torment. It allowed them to communicate, but reminded them constantly of what they couldn't have. "I hate this wall," Thisbe whispered one night. "I know. I hate that I can hear your voice, but I can't see your face. I hate that you're right there and I can't reach you. I know. I hate that our fathers—" She stopped herself. She didn't want to waste their precious time together talking about hatred. "Maybe someday," Pyramus said. "Maybe someday things will change." Will they? Our fathers will never forgive each other. They'd rather die than let us be together. Pyramus was silent for a long moment. "Then maybe we have to leave," he said. "Leave?" "Run away, together. Get out of the city and never come back." Thisbe's breath caught in her throat. "Where would we go?" "Anywhere, everywhere. It doesn't matter, as long as we're together." She pressed her palm against the crack, imagining his hand on the other side. "Yes," she said, "let's do it." They made a plan. The next night, they would sneak out of their houses. They would meet outside the city walls at the tomb of Ninus, an old king, long dead, whose monument stood in a field near a mulberry tree. They chose the spot because it was isolated, because no one went there at night, because they could meet without being seen. They would wait until midnight. They would slip out separately. They would find each other at the tomb, and then they would run away together, forever. Thisbe arrived first. She had managed to escape her house undetected. The guards were asleep. The doors were unlocked. She ran through the streets of Babylon, her heart pounding with excitement and fear. She passed through the city gates. She found the road to the tomb. The mulberry tree was there, its branches heavy with white fruit. The moon was bright. She could see clearly. She sat down to wait, and then she heard it, a growl, low and rumbling, coming from the darkness. Thisbe turned. A lioness emerged from the shadows. Its muzzle was red, with blood. It had just killed something, a cow, perhaps, or a deer. Blood dripped from its jaws. The lioness saw Thisbe. Their eyes met. Thisbe ran. She dropped her veil, the scarf she was wearing, and she ran without looking back. She ran to a nearby cave, the only shelter she could find, and she hid in its darkest depths. The lioness didn't chase her. It wasn't interested in humans. It padded over to the spring near the tomb to wash the blood from its mouth. On its way, it stepped on Thisbe's veil. It pawed at the fabric. It shook it in its jaws. It left it torn and bloody on the ground. Then it wandered off into the night. Pyramus arrived later. He had been delayed. A guard who didn't fall asleep. A door that was locked. An obstacle that took time to overcome. But he made it. He reached the tomb of Ninus. He saw the mulberry tree in the moonlight. He didn't see Thisbe. "Thisbe," he called softly, "are you here?" Silence. He walked toward the tree. His foot touched something soft on the ground. He looked down. A veil, torn, covered in blood. Pyramus's blood ran cold. He picked up the veil. He recognized it. He had seen Thisbe wear it 100 times. He had watched it flutter around her face. He had dreamed of removing it when they were finally together. Now it was soaked in blood. "No," he whispered. He looked around. He saw the tracks in the dust. Paw prints, large ones, a lion. It had to be a lion. Thisbe had come here to meet him. She had waited, and while she waited, a lion had found her, and now she was gone. Pyramus fell to his knees. "It's my fault," he said. "I told her to come here. I made her wait in this dangerous place. I was late. I wasn't here to protect her." He clutched the bloody veil to his chest. "One night," he said, "we were supposed to have forever, and instead we had nothing, not even one night." He looked at the veil. He looked at his sword. He made a decision. "We'll be together in death, then," Pyramus said. He drew his sword. He pressed the bloody veil to his lips, kissing the last remnant of Thisbe. "This fabric drinks my blood now too," he said, and he drove the sword into his own chest. He fell backward against the trunk of the mulberry tree. The sword was deep in his body. Blood poured from the wound. It sprayed across the roots of the tree. It soaked into the ground. It splashed up onto the white mulberries hanging overhead. The fruit absorbed the blood. White berries turned dark red, then darker, then almost black. Pyramus lay dying under the mulberry tree, his blood staining the fruit that would remember this moment forever. His last thought was of Thisbe. In the cave, Thisbe waited. She waited until the sounds of the lioness faded. She waited until silence returned. Then, trembling, she crept out of the cave. She had to find Pyramus. She had to warn him about the lion. She had to make sure he was safe. She ran back to the tomb. She saw the mulberry tree first. Something was different. The berries, which had been white in the moonlight, were now dark, almost black. She frowned, confused. Then she saw the body. Pyramus! She ran to him. She fell to her knees beside him. He was still alive, barely. His eyes fluttered open at the sound of her voice. Thisbe? His voice was a whisper. You're alive? I'm here. I'm here. I hid from a lion. I'm fine. Why did you... She saw her veil, bloody and torn, clutched in his hand. She understood. You thought I was dead, she said. You thought the lion killed me. The veil? I dropped it. When I ran, the lion must have... Pyramus's eyes closed. His breathing stopped. He was gone. Thisbe screamed. She cradled his body. She kissed his face, still warm, still beautiful even in death. You killed yourself for me, she said. You thought I was gone, and you couldn't bear to live? She looked at the sword, still embedded in his chest. Love killed you, she said. Our love. The love that was supposed to save us. She pulled the sword from his body. Then love will kill me too. She positioned the blade against her chest. She leaned forward. Wait for me, she whispered, and she let herself fall onto the sword. Their bodies were found the next morning. Two young lovers, beautiful even in death, entwined under a mulberry tree whose fruit had turned from white to blood red. The families were devastated. The feud that had kept them apart suddenly seemed meaningless. What did old grudges matter now? What did business deals and insults matter when their children lay dead in each other's arms? The fathers agreed to bury them together, in the same tomb, for eternity. The ashes of Pyramus and Thisbe were mingled in a single urn. The lovers who couldn't be together in life were inseparable in death. And the mulberry tree? It still grew by the tomb, but its fruit never turned white again. Every mulberry that grew on that tree, from that day forward, was dark as blood. A reminder of the night when two lovers died for each other. A reminder of what happens when parents try to keep love apart. There once was a king who had 3 daughters. The first 2 were beautiful. The third was something else entirely. Her name was Psyche, and she was so beautiful that people stopped believing in the gods. That's not an exaggeration. That's what happened. People came from all over the world to see her. They traveled for months just to look at her face. They fell to their knees before her. They brought offerings, flowers, incense, prayers, the offerings that should have gone to Aphrodite. Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, began to notice that her temples were emptying. Her altars were dusty. Her priests were idle. Everyone was too busy worshipping Psyche. A mortal? Aphrodite said. They're abandoning me for a mortal? The goddess was not pleased. Aphrodite summoned her son, Eros, the god of love, a beautiful young man with golden wings and a bow that shot arrows of desire. When Eros's arrows struck someone, they fell helplessly in love with the next person they saw. It was how love worked. It was Eros's power, and Aphrodite wanted him to use it on Psyche. "Find this mortal who thinks she can compete with me," Aphrodite said. "Shoot her with your arrow. Make her fall in love with the vilest, most disgusting creature you can find. A beggar, a criminal, a monster. Let her beauty be her curse." Eros nodded. He flew down to earth to carry out his mother's command. He found Psyche sleeping, and then something unexpected happened. Eros crept into Psyche's chamber. He stood over her sleeping form. He raised his bow. Then Psyche stirred in her sleep. She turned toward him. Moonlight caught her face. Eros saw her beauty up close. His hand trembled. The bow shook. The arrow slipped. It scratched his own finger. His own divine blood welled up from the wound. And the magic took hold. Eros, the god of love, fell in love with Psyche, helplessly, hopelessly, completely. He stared at her sleeping face. He felt his heart pound in his chest. He felt every symptom he had inflicted on millions of mortals throughout history. Now he understood what they felt. He dropped his bow. He fled into the night. And Psyche slept on, unaware that a god had just fallen in love with her. Psyche's life should have been perfect. She was the most beautiful woman in the world. Princes came from every kingdom to seek her hand. Her father's palace was full of suitors, but no one married her. Her sisters, the less beautiful ones, found husbands easily. They were married to kings, and they went off to live in grand palaces of their own. Psyche remained alone. Men came to look at her. They gasped at her beauty. They praised her perfection, and then they left. No one proposed. No one asked her father for her hand. No one seemed capable of actually loving her. It was as if some force was preventing it. And there was Eros, secretly driving away every suitor who approached, using his power to make sure no one else could have her, because he wanted her for himself. Psyche's father grew desperate. His youngest daughter was fading away. She was lonely and sad despite, or because of, her beauty. He went to consult the oracle of Apollo. He asked the god for guidance. The oracle's response was terrifying. "Dress your daughter for a funeral. Take her to the highest cliff in the kingdom. Leave her there. A monster will come for her, a beast feared by gods and men alike. It will take her as its bride." The king was horrified. His daughter married to a monster? But you don't ignore an oracle. You don't defy the gods. With tears streaming down his face, the king did as he was told. Psyche was dressed in black. She was led through the streets like a corpse being taken to burial. Her parents wept. The people of the kingdom wept. Everyone mourned for the beautiful princess who was being sacrificed to a monster. Except Psyche herself. She didn't cry. She didn't protest. Part of her was relieved. Life, as the most beautiful woman in the world, had been empty, lonely, meaningless. If this was her fate, if a monster was her destiny, at least it was something. At least it was different. They reached the cliff, the highest point in the kingdom. Below was nothing but darkness. Her family said their tearful goodbyes, and then they left her there, alone. Psyche stood on the cliff, waiting for the monster. She waited and waited. The night grew cold. The stars wheeled overhead. Nothing came. Then she felt a breeze, gentle at first, then stronger. A warm wind that wrapped around her like arms. It lifted her. She rose into the air, cradled by the wind itself. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt strangely peaceful. The west wind, Zephyrus, carried her down from the cliff. Down and down, gently, carefully, until she was set on soft grass in a beautiful valley. She looked around. Before her was a palace, not a cave, not a monster's lair, a palace more beautiful than any she had ever seen. Columns of gold, walls of silver, gardens filled with impossible flowers. And it was all for her. Psyche explored the palace. It was filled with wonders. Invisible servants attended her. She could hear their voices, feel their hands, but she couldn't see them. They brought her food and drink. They drew her baths. They played music for her. At night, someone came to her bed. She couldn't see him. The room was completely dark, but she could feel him, his warmth, his body, his lips against hers. He made love to her, gently, tenderly, with a skill that suggested experience beyond mortal understanding. "Who are you?" Psyche asked. "Your husband," the voice said. "Why can't I see you?" "You cannot know who I am. That is the rule. Accept what you have. A husband who loves you, a palace of wonders, anything you could desire. Only this one thing is forbidden. You must never try to see my face." It was a strange marriage, but Psyche was happy. For the first time in her life, she was truly happy. Months passed. Psyche grew to love her mysterious husband. Their nights together were passionate. Their conversations, in the dark, always in the dark, were deep and intimate. But she missed her family. She asked her husband if her sisters could visit. He hesitated. "I don't think that's wise." "Please, I haven't seen them since I was left on the cliff. They think I'm dead. Let me show them I'm happy." Against his better judgment, he agreed. The west wind brought Psyche's sisters to the valley. They saw the palace. They saw the treasures. They saw their little sister, the one who had been sacrificed to a monster, living in luxury beyond their wildest dreams. They were jealous. "What does your husband look like?" the older sister asked. Psyche hesitated. "I don't know." "You don't know?" "I've never seen him. He only comes to me in the dark." The sisters exchanged glances. "Psyche," the younger sister said, "don't you think that's strange? A husband who won't let you see his face?" He says. But what if he's hiding something? What if the oracle was right? What if your husband is the monster they spoke of?" "He's not a monster. He's gentle and kind and in the dark. Anyone can seem gentle in the dark. But what if in the light he's something horrible?" Psyche shook her head, but doubt had been planted. "What if he's keeping you in the dark because he's waiting for the right moment?" the older sister pressed. "What if he's fattening you up? What if one night, instead of making love to you, he plans to eat you?" "That's ridiculous." "Is it? Prove it. Look at his face. If he's not a monster, what does he have to hide?" The sisters left, but their words stayed behind. That night, Psyche's husband came to her as usual. They made love. He fell asleep beside her, his breathing slow and peaceful, and Psyche lay awake, staring into the darkness. What if her sisters were right? What if she was sleeping beside a monster every night? She had to know. She slipped out of bed. She crept to where she had hidden an oil lamp and a knife, the knife in case her sisters were right, in case she needed to defend herself. She lit the lamp. She turned around, and she saw the most beautiful being she had ever encountered. He wasn't a monster. He was Eros, the god of love himself. Golden wings folded against his back. A face more perfect than any mortal could imagine. A body like a sculpture come to life. Psyche stared. All this time, all these months. She had been married to a god. She leaned closer, overwhelmed by his beauty. She wanted to see every detail, to memorize every line of his face. The lamp tilted in her trembling hand. A drop of hot oil fell. It landed on Eros's shoulder. He woke with a cry of pain. He saw the lamp. He saw the knife in her other hand. He saw his wife, who had promised never to look at him, standing over him with light and a weapon. "Psyche," he said, and his voice was full of sorrow. "What have you done? I had to know? I told you not to look. I warned you. Why couldn't you trust me? My sisters said—" "Your sisters." He laughed bitterly. "Your sisters were jealous? They wanted to destroy your happiness? And you let them." He rose from the bed. He spread his wings. "Love cannot live where there is no trust," he said. "That is the law, even for gods." And he flew away into the night. The palace vanished. The gardens vanished. The invisible servants vanished. Psyche found herself alone, in the dark, in an empty field. Her husband was gone. Psyche searched for Eros. She wandered the world, asking everyone she met if they had seen the god of love. No one could help her. Gods didn't advertise their whereabouts to mortals. She went to temples. She prayed. She begged. No answer. Finally, in desperation, she went to the temple of Aphrodite, the goddess who had cursed her in the first place, the mother of the husband she had lost. She prostrated herself before the altar. "Great goddess," she said, "I've sinned against you. I accept that. Punish me however you wish. But please, let me see Eros again. Just once. I'll do anything." Aphrodite appeared. Her beauty was terrible to behold. Her smile was cruel. "Anything," the goddess said. "Be careful what you offer." Aphrodite set Psyche 4 impossible tasks. "Complete these," the goddess said, "and perhaps, I'll consider reuniting you with my son. Fail, and you die." The first task, sorting seeds. Aphrodite brought Psyche to a room filled with mixed seeds. Wheat, barley, millet, lentils, beans, all jumbled together in an enormous pile. "Sort them," Aphrodite said. "Separate each type. You have until morning." She left. Psyche stared at the mountain of seeds. It was impossible. She couldn't sort all of this in 100 mornings, let alone one. She collapsed. She wept. And then the ants came. Tiny ants streaming into the room by the thousands. They began to work, each one picking up a single seed and carrying it to the correct pile. By morning, the seeds were sorted. No one knew how. Psyche certainly didn't tell Aphrodite about the ants. The goddess was furious. But she had to admit the task was complete. The second task, gathering golden fleece. "Across the river," Aphrodite said, "there is a flock of golden sheep. Their wool shines like the sun. Bring me some of that fleece." What Aphrodite didn't mention, the golden sheep were violent. They weren't normal sheep. They were monsters wearing wool. During the day, when the sun was high, they became aggressive beyond reason. They attacked anything that approached. Their horns were sharp as bronze spears. Their hooves could crush bone. Shepherds who had tried to tend them were found trampled in the fields, their bodies barely recognizable. Thieves who had tried to steal their wool were gored and left to die. The golden fleece was valuable precisely because it was impossible to obtain. Psyche went to the river. She saw the sheep on the other side. They were beautiful in a terrifying way. Their wool caught the sunlight and blazed like fire. They moved through the meadow with a dangerous grace, their heads constantly turning, watching for threats. As Psyche watched, two of them butted heads. The sound was like thunder. One went down, and the other stood over it, victorious, blood on its golden fleece. These weren't sheep, these were killers. Psyche sat by the river and wept. She considered her options. She could try to run past them, grab some wool and flee before they caught her, but she wasn't fast enough. No human was fast enough. She could try to fight them, but she had no weapons, and even armed warriors had fallen to these creatures. She could give up, return to Aphrodite empty-handed, accept whatever punishment the goddess chose. Or she could throw herself into the river, end it here. At least then the torment would stop. She leaned towards the water, ready to let the current take her. But the river god spoke to her, a voice from the water itself, the god of the stream, ancient and patient. "Wait," the voice said. "Don't despair yet." Psyche paused. "Who's there?" "A friend, or at least not an enemy. I know why you're here. I know what you need." "Then you know it's impossible." "Not impossible, just difficult. And not difficult in the way you think." The river god explained. "The sheep are dangerous during the day. When the sun is high, they become aggressive. It's the heat that does it, or the light, or something in their nature that responds to midday. But at noon, they rest. They gather in the shade of the trees on the far bank. They sleep. And when they sleep, their fleece catches on the thorns, on the bushes, on the bark of the trees they rub against. You don't have to face the sheep. You just have to wait. Wait until they're sleeping. Then cross the river, gather the golden wool from the thorns and bushes where it has been caught. You'll have your fleece, and you'll have your life." Psyche listened. She waited. The sun climbed to its zenith. The sheep, as predicted, grew drowsy. They gathered in the shade. They lay down. Psyche crossed the river, quietly, carefully. The sheep didn't stir. She moved among the bushes near where they rested, and there, caught on every thorn, were strands of golden wool, shining like captured sunlight, more than enough to satisfy Aphrodite. She gathered the fleece into a bundle. She retreated across the river. The sheep slept on. She brought the golden wool to Aphrodite. The goddess's eyes narrowed. She had expected this task to kill Psyche. She had expected to hear of a mortal girl trampled in a field, another victim of the golden sheep. Instead, here was that mortal girl, alive and successful. "How did you do this?" Aphrodite demanded. Psyche said nothing. She just held out the fleece. Aphrodite snatched it from her hands. "The next task," the goddess said, "will not be so easy." The third task, collecting water from the river Styx. "At the top of the highest mountain," Aphrodite said, pointing to a peak that seemed to scrape the sky itself, "there is a spring. It feeds the river Styx, the river of death, the river on which even gods swear their unbreakable oaths. Bring me a flask of that water." Aphrodite smiled as she said it. This was no ordinary mountain. This was a peak that humans couldn't climb. The slopes were vertical. The rocks were razor sharp. The air at the top was so thin that mortals would suffocate before reaching the summit. And even if someone reached the spring, the water itself was deadly. One touch would dissolve mortal flesh. The spring was guarded by serpents that never slept, dragons that breathed poison. This task wasn't just difficult, it was certain death. Psyche took the flask. Aphrodite gave her a crystal vial, delicate and small. She began to climb. The mountain was worse than Aphrodite had described. The rocks cut her hands. The wind tried to tear her from the cliff face. Several times she nearly fell, saved only by luck or desperation. She climbed for what felt like days. Her muscles screamed, her lungs burned, her hands left bloody prints on every rock she touched. But she kept climbing, because giving up meant never seeing Eros again, and that was worse than any physical pain. She reached the summit. The spring was there, just as Aphrodite had said. Black water bubbling up from a crack in the rock, feeding a stream that tumbled down the mountainside and eventually became the Styx. The dragons were there too. 2 of them, enormous, scaled in black and green. Their eyes glowed like embers. Their breath was visible, not fire, but poison, a greenish mist that killed anything it touched. They saw Psyche. They didn't attack immediately. They didn't need to. She was trapped on a small ledge with nowhere to go. They could take their time. One of them opened its mouth. The poisonous breath began to flow toward her. Psyche closed her eyes. This was it. This was how she died. And then she heard wings. An eagle descended from the sky. Not just any eagle, Zeus's eagle. The bird that carried the king of the gods' thunderbolts, the most powerful bird in creation. It snatched the flask from Psyche's hand. "Eros helped me once," the eagle said. "When I was wounded, he healed me. When I was lost, he guided me. I owe him a debt." The eagle dove between the dragons. They snapped at it, but it was too fast. It swooped over the spring, dipped the flask into the black water, and soared back up. The dragons roared in frustration. The eagle returned the flask to Psyche, full of water from the river Styx. "Tell Eros his debt is repaid," the eagle said, and it flew away. Psyche descended the mountain, slower than the climb up, but safer. The hardest part was over. She brought the black water to Aphrodite. The goddess stared at the flask, at the water inside it, at the mortal girl who should have died a dozen times over but was still standing before her. "One more task," Aphrodite said, and her voice was cold with hatred. "Just one more." The 4th task was the worst. "Go to the underworld," Aphrodite said. "Find Persephone, queen of the dead. Ask her for a box of her beauty. Bring it back to me." This was a death sentence. Mortals didn't go to the underworld and return. The few who had tried, Orpheus, Theseus, had barely escaped, and only through divine intervention. Psyche was just a girl. She had no special powers. She had no divine help. She climbed a tower, planning to throw herself off. At least that way, she would reach the underworld quickly. But the tower spoke to her. "Don't jump," it said. "There's another way." The tower told her how to reach the underworld through a cave. It told her what to bring: coins for the ferryman, cakes for Cerberus. It told her what to avoid: helping people who asked for assistance, sitting down to rest, eating any food offered to her. And most importantly, it told her this: when Persephone gives you the box, do not open it. No matter how curious you are, do not open it. Psyche descended to the underworld. She followed all the instructions. She paid Charon. She gave cakes to Cerberus. She refused to help the suffering souls who begged for her attention. She reached Persephone's palace. The queen of the dead was kind, kinder than Aphrodite, certainly. She agreed to fill the box with some of her beauty. "Take it," Persephone said, "but be warned, this is not meant for mortal eyes." Psyche took the box. She returned through the underworld. She climbed back to the surface. She was almost there, almost done. One more task, and she would see Eros again. But curiosity gnawed at her. The box contained divine beauty, Persephone's own beauty. What if Psyche used just a little of it? Just enough to make sure Eros would still find her attractive after everything she'd been through. She opened the box. There was no beauty in the box. There was sleep, the sleep of the underworld, the sleep of death itself. It poured out and engulfed Psyche. She collapsed on the ground unconscious, not dead, but trapped in a death-like slumber. She lay there, motionless, and she might have lain there forever. But Eros was watching. Eros had been recovering from his burn. He had been angry at Psyche. He had told himself he was done with her, but he couldn't stop watching. He saw her suffer through each of his mother's tasks. He saw her persevere. He saw her prove again and again that she loved him enough to face any challenge. And now he saw her fall. He flew down from Olympus. He gathered the sleep back into the box. He closed the lid. He kissed Psyche awake. "You opened the box," he said. "I wanted to be beautiful for you." "You are beautiful. You've always been beautiful. That's not why I love you." "Why do you love me?" Eros smiled. "Because you came to the underworld for me. Because you faced my mother for me. Because after everything, you still wanted me." He helped her to her feet. "Come," he said. "Let's finish this." Eros flew Psyche to Mount Olympus. He burst into the hall where the gods were assembled. He placed Psyche before Zeus himself. "Father," he said, "I want to marry this woman, properly, with your blessing." Zeus looked at Psyche. He looked at Eros. He smiled. "Your mother won't be happy," he said. "My mother is never happy." "True." Zeus turned to Aphrodite. "Let them marry. The girl has proven herself." Aphrodite wanted to protest, but Zeus had spoken. Not even she could defy the king of the gods. "Fine," she said through gritted teeth. "Let them marry." Zeus gave Psyche ambrosia to drink, the food of the gods, the nectar of immortality. She became immortal, a goddess, Eros' equal in every way. They were married on Olympus, surrounded by all the gods. Even Aphrodite attended, though she didn't look happy about it. And in time, Psyche gave birth to a daughter. They named her Hedone, pleasure, the child of love and soul, the happy ending that the Greeks so rarely gave. These were the cursed lovers of Greek mythology, Orpheus and Eurydice, who came so close to defeating death only to fail at the last moment, who proved that love can reach into the underworld itself, but not always bring anything back. Echo and Narcissus, the girl who could only repeat and the boy who could only reflect. Two people destroyed by the same inability to truly connect. A story about what happens when love becomes obsession. Pyramus and Thisbe, the original star-crossed lovers, separated by a wall, united only in death. A reminder that sometimes the obstacles to love are not monsters or gods, but ordinary human hatred. And Eros and Psyche, the god who fell in love with a mortal, the mortal who had to prove her love through impossible trials. The only story tonight with a happy ending, and even that ending required death, resurrection, and divine intervention. The Greeks understood something about love that we often forget. Love is dangerous. It doesn't make us better. It makes us vulnerable. It gives us something to lose. When Orpheus looked back, it wasn't weakness. It was love. He loved Eurydice so much that he couldn't bear the uncertainty. He had to know she was there, even though knowing would destroy everything. When Narcissus looked into that pool, he wasn't vain. He was lonely. He had never found anyone worthy of his love. And when he finally found someone, even though that someone was himself, he couldn't look away. When Pyramus found that bloody veil, he didn't stop to think. He didn't consider other explanations. His love made him certain, and his certainty killed him. When Psyche opened that box, she wasn't being disobedient. She was being human. She wanted to be worthy of a god. She wanted to be enough. Love makes us do stupid things. The Greeks knew this. They didn't promise us happy endings. They didn't tell us that love conquers all. They told us that love is a god, Eros with his golden arrows, and gods don't care about human happiness. They told us that love is a curse from Aphrodite, who punished anyone who threatened her supremacy. They told us that love is a force that seizes us, possesses us, drives us to do things we would never otherwise do, and sometimes destroys us. But they also told us this: when Orpheus finally died, Eurydice was waiting for him. When Narcissus reached the underworld, Echo was still repeating his words. When Pyramus and Thisbe were buried, their ashes were mingled together. And when Psyche completed her trials, she became a goddess. Love is dangerous. Love is destructive. Love is a curse. But the Greeks also believed that love was the most powerful force in the universe, more powerful than death, more powerful than the gods themselves, worth any price, worth any pain, worth looking back even when you know you shouldn't. There are more stories to tell, more lovers who were cursed, more hearts that were broken, more myths that end in tragedy. The old stories are waiting. They've been waiting for thousands of years. And they'll be here whenever you're ready. Until next time, sleep well. And if you dream of someone you've lost tonight, try not to look back.